Good morning, everybody. I'm Kate Seelye, Senior Vice President of the Middle East Institute, and because we don't have a lot of time, I want to get started on time. I'd like to welcome you to today's event with Yassine Brahim, Meriem Bourguiba, and Scott Mastic to talk about the democratic transition underway in Tunisia. We're delighted and honored that they're here to talk about political developments, and it's a very critical time because it's the lead up to both the general parliamentary elections in October and the presidential election in November. As the region implodes in the face of the collapse of state structures and as sectarian conflict rises, Tunisia really stands as a beacon of stability as well as a model of a successful ongoing democratic transition. And though the transition has been rocky and some blood has been shed, what's been unique about Tunisia, and really we give so much credit to its political players and actors, is that they've chosen to focus on building political consensus and working toward compromise. And that has allowed for the crafting of a constitution that is one of the Arab world's most progressive constitutions, and one that should be held up as an example. It allows not only for freedom of belief, but something that's quite unique in the region, freedom of conscience. And that means you can be an agnostic or an atheist or a Baha'i in Tunisia today. And that is a first. The new constitution also divides power between a strong prime minister chosen by the parliament and a president elected by the people. And with both parliamentary and presidential elections just around the corner, I imagine candidates and parties are scrambling to organize in advance of these very key elections. So that's why it's very interesting for us to have with us today members of one of these parties, Afek Tunis, to talk about preparations for the election, to talk about their platform, and to talk about the challenges and expectations ahead. Afek Tunis can be described as a classic liberal free market party. Its members are entrepreneurs and young businessmen, I understand, and they're branding themselves as the progressive party in Tunisia. Their platform proposes concrete solutions for economic development and recovery and reform of the Ben Ali laws. They're also very pro-international trade. They have 4 members in the Constituent Assembly, and they're ranking 6th in the polls currently. Yassine Brahim, who's here with us today, is the president and co-founder of Afek Tunis. He was Minister of Transportation and Equipment in the early days after the revolution, and formerly CEO of SunGard, a U.S. company employing 500 engineers in Tunisia. He was educated in France and has a background in IT work. Meriem Bourguiba is a prominent executive member of Afek Tunis and has worked very actively to engage women in politics. She's the granddaughter of President Habib Bourguiba. I knew her as a child. We were in art classes together when my father was ambassador in Tunisia. She was formerly an investment banker, and she holds a degree in homeopathy and Reiki. And also joining us to speak today is Scott Mastic, the regional director for the Middle East and North Africa division of the International Republican Institute, where he's monitored many an election, including Tunisia's 2011 election, and it's thanks to IRI that Brahim and Bourguiba are here today. So I want to thank our guests for joining us. I'd like to acknowledge the presence of the Tunisian ambassador. It's a great honor to have you here, Mr. Ambassador, and I'd like to begin the program by inviting Mr. Brahim to the podium.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation to the List Institute and to give me the opportunity to talk here about what's happening in Tunisia. I've been here for 3 days, and the global impression is that everyone is telling us, you are doing well. I guess that's relative about all what's happening in the region. And my answer, yes, we are doing well. I agree, we are doing well, we've done well, it's been tough, but we are doing well. But it's fragile, it's fragile. We are living in the end of, let's say, maybe the 6th transitional government since the revolution 3 years ago. And we have in front of us a lot of challenges. We are on the field, we are working politically in all the regions. And we feel that people are not motivated at all to go to vote next time. The question is why? The transitional period, the first transition, was supposed to be 1 year. It's been 3 years. A lot of political fights, a lot of political disagreement. The image of politics is really people that are fighting in the TV debates, so no one is watching them now. The social problems and economical problems, which were one of the main reasons of the revolution, nothing happened, nothing improved. They're still here, it's even worse. One of the main challenge of Tunisia in the 10 last years is really demography. We have around 120,000 young people coming to the market every year. And when we grow 3–4%, we can offer just 40,000, 50,000 jobs. That's one of the main problems of Tunisia today. And the 3 last years have been worse because we had even recession the first year, 2011, 2% 2012, and less than 3% in 2013. So in front of us, we have internal social and economical challenges, side of the political ones and the institutional ones. At the same time, we have an international environment that is quite exceptional. We never had to deal so much with this level with terrorism in Tunisia. All what's going on, what's happening in sub-Saharan Africa, in Libya, is impacting us, of course. Today in Tunisia, we have more than 1.5 million Libyans in Tunisia. They were less than 50,000 in 2010. What's happening in Libya impact, of course, the neighborhood, especially Tunisia. So, say, yeah, we are doing well. We'll make it, but it won't be easy. It's fragile, and we need to work globally together with the international community, especially on this terrorism and this geopolitical situation in the region. We need really cooperation. Cooperation with our neighbors. Of course, Algeria is strongly concerned with that, with the European Union, of course, but also with the United States. And that's exactly the message that we are sending during this week, during all the meetings that we had with the official and, of course, all the institutions that are acting and lobbying in the United States. Tunisia, if we come back to what happened very shortly, we've been able to find a solution with a national dialogue. A national dialogue on which we finally agreed, thanks to organizers, which were more the civil society, the union, the business union as well, the lawyers, and the human rights organization. Under this national dialogue, bringing all the political parties to discuss together and find a solution. A solution, of course, on the constitution, but as well on the government. We were not confident at all during the what we call the Troika, I mean Nahda, Takatul, and CPR government, how we will go to the election with all the nominations that were done that were more partisans, where the state and the administration will play a role for those elections. How we'll deal with the mosques all over the country, which part of them were not really managed by the state, still until now. How we'll deal also with some social and economical problem to have a global environment for the election that will make them successful, at least as successful as the election of the 23rd of October 2011. So the new government has been set up at the end of January 2014, and they are following that roadmap, not maybe with the right speed from Afek Tunis perspective, especially on the nomination and on the security issues as well. And also on the economical and social problems, they lost the window of the 100 first days where really they can act very quickly now, because we are entering now the campaign and the discussion about the programs of the party. It won't be easy to change anything between today and the elections. But at the same time, we need to support them, and we continue to support them because that's the unique path with which we can reach this election on the best conditions. What will happen after that? Because transition is not finished. As soon as we still have these fundamental social and economical problems, we'll be in a kind of second longest transition. But that one could be really successful. Because first of all, we have 5 years with, I hope, not any fundamental crisis in the beginning to allow the government to work with a more longer-term program. From our point of view in Afek Tunis, we need really fundamental reforms in the country to be able to make it and to be able to be at the right level in front of the social challenges that we have. The economy, I saw, we were in the World Bank, and one of the economists that was supposed to come in the World Bank, from the World Bank for a few months in 2010, unfortunately he came in December 2010, so he spent 3 years and not 3 months. And he stated that the first, his report said, yeah, Tunisia has all what it needs to be the tiger of Mediterranean. We are well placed, I mean, geographically speaking. We could be a hub for several markets, North African market, of course, Maghreb especially. We are the south of Europe, 420 million market with a level of purchase that is 3, 4, 5 times the level in Tunisia. Africa, which is supposed to be the country of the 21st century in terms of economics. We are in Africa, even if we not even always recognize that, but we are in Africa. So we have these opportunities. The problem is that we have an economy that is still really what we call a state-owned economy. We have economy that is becoming bureaucratic. We have an economy where the state is not really playing the role and concentrating on the role that we had at the independence period of time, which means the state focusing on education, focusing on healthcare, focusing on infrastructure, focusing on security, which is challenging for the future, reform of the justice, and get the state get out of any competitive business in the economy. That's really our mainstream as Afek Tunis Party, Liberal Social Party. We need to avoid to continue to protect so much our business companies within our market because they are not competitive at the end of the day today. We need really to liberalize, but actually without this cryonism approach. Because we say, yeah, in Ben Ali area, it was liberalized, it didn't work. It was privatization, was that, it didn't work. Yeah, but we liberalized for who? For few members of family, for few families. It's not open. Today in Tunisia, if you want to open a supermarket, you need to go to 3 families. If you want to open any small retail business, you have tens, let's say, at least tens of formal bureaucratic steps. That's encourage corruption. That's encourage cryonism. It doesn't work. The entrepreneurs are not finding really an environment that will encourage them to innovate, to invest, and to create value in the market. So I said, yeah, but after revolution, of course, we always have a kind of, because if we have a revolution, we don't have a social justice, in fact. But the danger, by trying just to repair the social justice, that we become a social dictator. And that's a big risk. Because today we have a lot of requests, demands, etc. for the people that have jobs. But what about the youth that are coming to the market and they don't have yet a job? They don't have anything to defend for them. If the economical environment is too much dominated by the requests of the people that are having jobs, it will be tough to create new jobs. Where really the challenge and the leverage is on how we will create to jobs. So the economy could grow at 7-8% in Tunisia. But we need to change a lot of things. I'm from a region, Mehdiya, where the sea is important, so fishermen, etc. And I'm working with them now on what's going on, what's wrong, etc. We have laws. I went even to the laws. We have laws dating from France, 1882. So you can imagine no one is respecting the law. But because it's not, you cannot work with that. But to be able to work, you need to bribe. Because the law is law. So we need to change that. The land, I mean, any projects. We have several in this region again, several what we call industrial region to set up factories, etc. You can wait 10 years, 8 years because of the laws on the lands. It's not easy to change the nature of the land, etc. to be able. And I saw so many entrepreneurs finishing by making buildings and renting flats where at the beginning they had idea to make factories and create jobs. So there is really a fundamental reform that we need to make it internally before, because I heard a lot, unfortunately the political, I would say, population today is not sufficiently economically aware how things work. And we literally, you need to help us, the international community need to help us, you're not helping us enough, etc., etc. If you put the right setup, everyone will be happy to help you because they will want money. They will have return on investment. We will make it ourselves. We need to reform the country to be attractive. Of course, on international issues like securities, like problem on the front, on the borders, etc., terrorism, we need to cooperate and we need to be helped because we don't have today the right means to act very quickly on these issues. But when you talk economy, if you set up the right environment, if you set up the right laws, if you set the right direction, if you are taking the global trends that now exist all over the world for a free and really free market, encouraging innovation, entrepreneurship, and giving the opportunity to an investor to invest correctly, we are in a very good region with a very good opportunity, with skilled people, with all what is needed to succeed. The international community will follow. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brahim. Meriem, I'd like to invite you to the podium.
Well, after the yang talk, we're going to have some yin talk. I like to, for women participation in politics, I like to always give it a women's touch. After all, that's our added value, or at least I hope. Yassine told you about a strong state that we're really dreaming of, hopefully aspiring to. I'd just like to say that if there should be any dictatorship from now on in Tunisia, I'd rather it would be the dictatorship of the law. Because with a very strong justice system, with laws that will be applied to everybody and anyone that breaks it, then people will be reassured. People will have the sense of justice that they're craving for and that they've been actually crying out since what we call the revolution and have not yet had. Until now, over 3 years ago, over 3 years on, we still have a transitional justice to be implemented. We've been promised them. We now have an instance that has been very controversially elected. Its president controversially elected, and the first event of that instance was a first resignation 2 days ago. So that's a good start. But if I can zoom out a little bit, I'd like to just give you my slant into this revolution, and we'll define it as evolution in revolution. Yes, revolution when we wanted to change a lot of things. We have changed a lot of things, But no, revolution, we don't want to erase everything and start from scratch. That's a lot of waste of time, energy, money, and very precious lives. And we've already suffered enough, I believe. This evolution would be, after the hiatus of 23 years, would basically talk back about the youth, education, health, as cultural and sports space for them, just to give them a good start in life and hopefully a good outlook in the future. Evolution in the achievements of that little country in the rights of women that are as yet unequaled in the Arab Muslim world. And evolution that has already started in the tremendous work of the civil society that has been occurring since the revolution, but especially since the elections, where basically it was the wall against obscurantism. Frankly, without our civil society, I don't think we'd be smug today. And we are, and we're, well, I for one am very grateful for this civil society. But then I wasn't expecting any less. I've worked in civil society for 30 years, and I do know how much power and how much goodwill can come out of that, and one mustn't underestimate it. I just want to go back to the youth. The political, the people who went into politics since the 14th of January are from different generations. So our generation, I'd like to say that I'm his generation. Our generation is really the generation of what we call the sons and daughters of Bourguiba. So we made full use of the education and of the, as I said, the cultural space and the sports space. Yassine was a swimming champion. So, but we have the youth of today is the Ben Ali youth. The education was not so good by the last few years of Ben Ali's reign. It's the youth of after the revolution we've noticed, or we've been shocked to see. It's the youth of the jihadists in Syria. Okay, not many of them, but I mean they did think of it. More numerous is the number of youth that have wanted to have crossed to Lampedusa, and apparently from 3 years ago, 50% to 95%, 20%. So we're now, 95% of the youth, especially men, want to cross the Mediterranean. They want to leave the country. They want to leave the ship. As far as they're concerned, that ship is still sinking. And hopefully the people of my generation will try to instill back some of the goodwill and some of the dreams, because really without dream you can't achieve anything. In fact, my main problem with the youth is participation in elections. We were only a miserly 50% going into elections. That should have been really the opening of a fantastic new chapter. And the worst abstention rate was in the youth. In Bizerte, in the northern port of Tunisia, only 6% of the youth made it to the polls. It is, in fact, when I go to the coffee shops and I see all these youth, and I just try to speak their own language, and I tell them, well, what you mean to tell me, usually because they answer me, no, we didn't go to vote. I tell them, what you mean to tell me is that the referee gave you a penalty shot and you did not shoot it. That they understand. Some of them have actually promised me to shoot it the next time. I choose to believe them. Now for the women. I've gone around the country as well, and apart from the coffee shops, I went to the hammams and to houses as well, to homes. There it's different. You see, with the joblessness, a girl who's looking for a job will just go for it. Any job, even if it's not exactly what she wants or needs, or what it doesn't match her diploma, she'll go for it. A man won't go for it. He just wants exactly what it says on the paper. That's why they're just all over the country in coffee shops all day. So what happens here is that the women go to work. They bring the bread home. But they're dead tired, because when they get home, they still have the shopping to do, the cooking to do, the kids, and everything else. I guess that is probably universal anyway. And they're tired, and they start resenting the men, because what do the men do? If they don't have a job, they will take the cigarette and the coffee money from their wives, daughters, mothers, sisters, and go spend it, as I said, all day long in the coffee shop. But they're not stupid. They know they're not doing right. They know as well, especially as a Middle Eastern man, they're not providing for their households. That's castrating. And that breeds resentment too. So I can understand that if somebody comes up to the woman and says, well, if you vote for me, the man will have to provide for you, you just stay home. And they go to the man and said, oh, you've got 4 of them at home. They'll do, one will wash your feet, the other one will do the cooking, the other one probably, hopefully with a diploma, will do the homework for the kids. That's good too. Fine. But I guess now the penny dropped. And especially with the women, I'd like to empower them to sit with little words as well, so we don't go to the football pitch with them. I just tell them that they are the government. So I ask them, who's the prime minister in the household? Who's the finance minister in the household? Who's the education minister? Or the health minister, or the transport minister, for that matter? The penny really drops there. And it's extraordinary to see those women, when I leave them, the head is slightly up, the eye is a little bit more assured, and I go, okay, now you talk to your brothers, sisters, sons, daughters, mothers, fathers, and hopefully good old common sense would prevail, because that's what I'm counting on for my people. They do have the common sense, we just have to let them tap into it. All that is going to be, hopefully, allowed, because we do have a constitution, finally. We do have that constitution. Although when I was campaigning for the seat at the NCA, a lot of the women, especially the women actually, say, what's wrong with Bourguiba's constitution? And I said, well, it's 60 years old. They won't change. We're in a revolution. Yeah, well, we clean it up and we just modernize it. I said, yeah, but, but it's okay. We finally managed. And again, the civil society allowed it to be more of what we want and less of what only one particular fringe of society wants. In fact, I guess that this constitution is actually quite inclusive. I don't think that anybody will complain about it. Now the rest of the work remains for the parliament to give us the laws that will match the spirit in which the revolution occurred, and with which all the hard work and tears and blood for the past 3 years. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank the Middle East Institute for hosting this event today, and also just express what an honor it is to share a stage, so to speak, with the granddaughter of Tunisia's founding president, Bourguiba. I'm going to be very brief. I've been asked to add something about our experience working in Tunisia, to give a sort of micro level analysis of what's occurred in the country to date and what may be to come. And I'll try to say something about that too with respect to political competition in the elections. I do think, though, Afek Tunis as a party adds something important to the political discourse in Tunisia, because they're sharing ideas that are new and fresh, and that's enlivening and enriching the political debate in Tunisia. And part of what's so interesting about what's happening in Tunisia today is that it's a marketplace of free ideas. That's something that did not exist in the past, so it's really important as the country tries to move its transition along, that Tunisians have an opportunity to hear ideas and have a rich debate about where the country's going and what sort of policy they should be putting in place. Afek is an example of one of the types of parties IRI works with in Tunisia. At this point, we have very active relationships with all of the major parties. That includes Nida Tunis, the Ennahda Party, Jamhouri, Congress for the Republic, the Atakato Party. And I think at IRI, one of the reasons we're so encouraged about what's happening in Tunisia is based on the interactions we've had with parties since the start of 2011. And really, IRI's presence and work in Tunisia has only existed in the country and in a meaningful way, I would say, since 2011. And that's probably true of our sister organization as well, the National Democratic Institute, which I also see is represented here today. But of course, during the Ben Ali era, we weren't permitted to work in the country, and that's now thankfully changed. Tunisia, certainly by the standards of the rest of the region, it looks a lot better, right now, and what's happening. But again, for us, I think part of what makes us so encouraged and optimistic about Tunisia is based on the interactions we've had with people over the years. And that is really a seriousness that we see on the part of the various stakeholders in Tunisia, both with respect to their desire to engage politically and to grow their organizations and achieve goals. That is true with respect to the political parties, but also the NGO sector. And then speaking more broadly with respect to the transition, a consistent effort to resolve differences through dialogue, and ultimately a collective interest in the country moving forward, irrespective of where people sit politically, irrespective of what belief they may have about the appropriate role of religion and state. There is that collective commitment to move the country forward that really does make, at this point, I think, Tunisia a bit of an exception with respect to what you see elsewhere in the Middle East region. When we first started working in Tunisia, one of the main focuses of our work was trying to engage the parties about going door to door, knocking on people's door. This was somewhat of a novel concept, I think, to a lot of people there, including, frankly, the traditional parties that had been in existence but in opposition during the Ben Ali era, because they weren't allowed to do that. But that was an important, I think, first function, because what it allowed was the parties to start to interact directly with voters, and all important to build voter databases, to start to identify who potential supporters or members could be, who potential voters could be, and to organize that in a systematic way. What it also did was force a bit those party activists to think in a very succinct way about what they wanted to tell a voter, what we would call a 30-second elevator speech, right? Because people's time is precious and they don't have a lot of patience to hear from politicians. So it helped immediately start to refine the messaging points. It also, frankly, let IRI, and as an organization trying to help the process, see who was most serious about these things, because some were much more inclined to actually do it than others, and some were better able to get people in the room to send them out and go knock on people's doors than others. Another big part of the work that we've been doing is related to public opinion survey research. We've now done 11 public opinion polls in Tunisia. There's one in the field right now. We partner with a local group called Elka Consulting to conduct that work. And over the course of time, parties have become very active consumers of that work, after what was admittedly, I think, some healthy suspicion at the outset about what these numbers actually meant and what they're representative of and how did you get them. What the polling work allows us to do with the parties as we're interacting with them is to start to identify, again, potential voters, but more important, issue priorities, what voters want to hear from parties, and then to start to look at where those voters are with respect to, are they men, are they women, are they rural, are they urban, where are the undecided voters, what is the voter profile that is most inclined to have a positive opinion of a party like Afek Tunis versus the Ennahda party, and who are the people that are undecided, or perhaps could they move more into their respective camps as they think about their electoral strategies. And so that's been an important component of the work as well. In the last year, a big part of what we've been focusing on is helping the parties set up internal capabilities to train their own members to be able to compete in the elections effectively. So we call those internal party training academies. It's a series of programs that we put on with different party activists that come to a common location, Tunis or elsewhere in the country from the regions. That has been helpful in starting to build self-sufficiency within the parties so that they can, in turn, on their own, grow their organizations over time and hopefully be effective voices for real constituent concerns, constituent bases that they can represent in an electoral context. And so that's been a major focus of the work that we've been doing over the course of the past year. And here again, part of the reason that I think that we are so encouraged by Tunisia is we see a real seriousness there on the part of the parties, both to receive that information, but then to, more importantly, act on it, and to, on their own, be able to develop internal, self-sustaining, self-sufficient capacity to do the work that they should be doing. And we'll see what that means in terms of the electoral context and what they're able to achieve. But I think to date has been very encouraging for us. The interactions with parties also now have reached a stage of relationship where they're more catered on a party-specific basis because, frankly, the parties have very different needs. A new, smaller party like Afek Tunis has different things to think about than larger parties like Nida Tunis or Ennahda. A lot of the interactions have, with the smaller parties or newer parties have been strategic planning efforts to try and think about how they should utilize limited resources in the most constructive way to set up structures in the country and build their organizations, whereas with large organizations that have been in existence for a long time, there are oftentimes more reason to focus on sort of internal communications issues, vertical between the local and the national level or across different key decision makers within a party. And then, of course, the external communications challenges, especially for some of the parties that may have served in the Troika government, right? Which now there's an impression about those parties that they need to think about and manage with respect to the performance that they've had. So those are some of the things that we do in Tunisia, and our counterpart organization, NDI, does a lot of similar types of activities. But again, I think I share all of this with you to say that with respect to the democratic development component of this and how political organizing is occurring, I think we are very encouraged by what we have seen thus far, certainly by the standard of the Middle East, North Africa region, but even if you think about transitional context globally, what you're seeing in Tunisia is incredibly impressive and encouraging to us. So let me just real quick talk about where we are now and what I see as, in terms of electoral competition, what's coming up. Some of this was touched on by Yassine and Meriem, and they may disagree with me, so we'll see. First, the voter registration is going to open on Monday, right? So based on the 2011 election, the parties cannot count on people just going to register to vote. They're going to have active efforts to encourage voter registration. And they have obviously a vested interest in doing this, because even if somebody says, I support your party, they can't vote, parties need to get them to go vote. Beyond this now, with the elections split, and so likely 3 elections, and Yassine kind of touched on this, the enthusiasm level for participation may decrease over the course of each successive election, right? Might be the most during the parliamentary in October, and then if there's a 3rd election, if we get to that phase, people may be asking themselves, why am I going to vote yet again? So the parties are going to have to have very active get out the vote efforts for all of those elections. I think with respect to Afek Tunis, they seem to be primarily focused on the parliamentary, but that's not true of all the parties. And all of them have limited resources, so they have to think carefully about how to use those resources, right? Second, people in Tunisia have a negative view of parties. That's not unique to Tunisia. We see a sort of a global phenomenon on this. Certainly in the United States, people have a negative view of political parties, right? But in the poll we did in February, 50% said that parties are not doing enough to address the needs of people like you. So most people think of that as, I'm an average, ordinary person, and parties aren't doing enough for me. 57% said the parties are only interested in power and personal gain. Again, this is not a Tunisia-specific problem, but it's nonetheless something that Tunisians have to think about, and especially Tunisian parties have to think about, especially in a transitional context where they kind of have an uphill battle in distinguishing themselves. There's a large number of parties, and then also motivating people to actually go vote and to vote for them. With respect to the newer parties, I mentioned sort of the interactions we're having with them on building the organizations. Okay, that gets more complicated though over the course of 3 elections, where there are limited resources and they really need to think about where they have that organization, how they are going to utilize volunteers, members, and encourage voter participation. So that's a sort of problem specific to them. On the other hand, of course, and as I mentioned, the governing or the troika parties have this challenge with sort of the record that they've had until now that they will have to manage with voters and encouraging them to vote. Also, it was mentioned by Meriem, the challenge of young people. The parties are having a hard time connecting with young Tunisians. And I don't just mean contacting them. I mean connecting with them and motivating them to either join the party or at the very least be motivated to go vote and understand that it's something important that they should take part in. So that's a key challenge that they're going to face. The alternating system of male and female candidates in Tunisia on party lists presents a challenge with respect to female candidates, because the parties have to fill out those lists with female candidates, and in many cases they're going to be competing for women to fill out the lists. So that's something that they're going to have to think about. And then lastly, with respect to electioneering and coalitions, the environment in Tunisia is not that conducive right now to pre-electoral coalition shaping up, because it's been a long time since the last election. There's sort of a relative sense of strength. Some of the polling indicates what party strength is, right? But I think the likelihood, especially with parliamentary elections first, so the parties are going to give it a go before they think about starting to form coalitions. If that's the case, what it means is a lot of election campaigning noise, right, from different parties, and it makes it difficult even for a party like Afek Tunis that's pretty singularly focused on a specific set of ideas to sort of like stand out or be heard. So how do voters understand what the different parties are selling them, so to speak, right, with respect to their vision about the future of the country. That's going to be a key challenge that I think all the parties will face as we get closer to the elections. And I think I'm going to stop there so that we could have questions.
All right. Okay. Please join me in thanking our speakers. Can I invite you to stand here, Brahim and Meriem? Yassine, could you stand here? We're going to sort of stand and take questions together. And I think because we have so little time, I'll take a series of questions. I'll take sort of 3 questions at once. So sort of, if anybody needs pens and paper, because I think can we go like a little bit past 1, Scott? Do you have
Actually,
what's your, okay, great. Well, I'm going to take the prerogative of the floor to ask the first question. It's such a rich and exciting political landscape in comparison to the rest of the Middle East. It's really wonderful to be talking about this. I want to ask you about sort of what you all have learned since the 2011 election. Scott mentioned there's not a lot of trust in political parties. There's voter apathy. We saw in 2011 and around the region, liberal parties did not do as well as Islamist parties. They haven't had the same history of organizing. Their message was maybe not crafted as well. I want to know what Afek Tunis has learned and how you think you're going to better craft your message and reach those constituencies and get beyond the city and convince people that you are a party that people should vote for. So that's my question. And now let's throw it out for other questions. The gentleman in the back here, please, if you could identify yourself.
Munji Dawadi with CSID. Actually, I'm going to piggyback on your question, which is to Afek Tunis. My understanding, at least from listening from the presentation, that you tend to focus on liberalizing the economy, focus on more investment, making it easy for capital money to flow in Tunisia. I'm sure you're focusing on creating jobs. However, we know that the revolution, especially in Tunisia, where it started in regions where it saw marginalization, poverty, areas that has been ignored for a long time, that hasn't. So how are you going to message or at least package your ideas so it resonates with these people who are asking for more interference from the government, who are asking for more subsidies and such? So it seems to me like that would be a challenge. So I would like to hear how you're going to.
Okay, let's one more question. The gentleman in the back here.
Yeah, I'm Dan O'Flaherty with the National Foreign Trade Council, and thank you very much for the presentations. I have spent a fair amount of time in Tunisia. I'm aware that in the last election there were an enormous number of parties that ran and ensured that Ennahda would win. My question is simply a political one. To what extent are the secular parties able to collaborate or consolidate to confront Ennahda?
Great, thank you. So let's take these 3 questions. Meriem, and do you want to begin? Or?
Right. Yeah, maybe I will take to start the one about the how we run the election, and especially based on the economical and social issues. The first elections came very quickly for all the political actors, in fact. We had the revolution in January 2011 and the election in October 2011. And actually, Ennahda won, not just because Ennahda was acting as a political party before the revolution, but Ennahda is a very large organization that has 30 years. In fact, they've been able really to be the most prepared party for those elections compared to the existing party that we have in the opposition, and especially parties that were focusing on human rights, etc., and fighting against the dictatorships that were really small parties, actually, of hundreds of people and not tens of thousands of activists like Ennahda had. So the political map is still today under building. And in fact, we have also, as a reaction to what happened in October 2011, there was, for example, Afek Tunis, because the result was not bad for Afek Tunis as a new party. We went to a union of several parties to build the Jamhuriya at that time, with the idea, if the Constituent Assembly will stay just 1 year, we won't build a democracy without having, a kind of possibility of alternative, in fact, to the winner in the following election. And actually didn't work as well as we hoped for several reasons, but Nida Tunis made that project, in fact, as a reactive project to what we had in the first period of time. And so now we consider that we have three, I would say, front, not really political party as a classical definition of political parties. At the extreme left, with the Jabhat Shabiya, with the Popular Front, we have Nida as a front, and we consider even Nahda as a front. In fact, we have so many strands within a Nahda that also Nahda will need to evaluate in the following period of time. As soon as the elections were postponed each time and we didn't know where it finished, no one of them really took the time to have a real Congress asking how they will build the future and how it will become a political party. That's the reason why we decided really to position ourselves on our roots as a liberal social party with a clear ideology about the solution for the people. And in fact, we know that it will take time. It will take time, and to build any party, it takes time. But actually, we are doing the door-to-door, we are approaching the people, we are talking about the problem, we are talking how to solve every problem. And of course, we have all these regional disparities in the country, and we have it always all over, all the world, that we have disparities in the country between what is going on the coast, what is going on the urban area compared to the rural area. That's not specific to Tunisia, actually. And we could even consider that the state played a role and built several things in these interior regions. But what is missing is maybe infrastructure. Tunisia is a very small country. You have 300 kilometers, is the largest, in fact, point to point between the coast and the interior regions. And in fact, our economy is the economy of flow, because it's a very small market. We have just 10 million people. That means that if you want to build anything, in any factory business, you need to import. And most of the businesses export as well. So you need a port. You need a distance to the port that is acceptable to invest. And I remember Seelye, which is a very poor region in Tunisia. When I was minister, I was visiting several projects. I was infrastructure minister, so a lot of roads, etc. And I saw a factory in Seelye. Seelye is more an agricultural region, in fact. Very large factory. So I asked the governor, I said, what's this? It's the largest factory that we have in Seelye. Oh, that was 1 month after the revolution. Can I visit it? Yeah, of course. We went to visit that factory. 2,500 people were working there. German factory. They were making cables to the German car makers. And I said, oh, and during the revolution, what happened? Most of the people came to protect their factory. Wow, impressive. Why? Because they have very good jobs. They are well treated in this factory. And it's working now for more than 3-4 years. They don't want troubles. That means what? That means that actually, if you have the good conditions, if you have all what is needed to attract, because Seelye is just, and for the moment, the transport is very difficult to send, to attract the right investor that will treat people correctly and manage them correctly and have really citizens, entrepreneurs within the country, you can bring investor whatever is the region. So the idea is just not to say, yeah, the state will solve it all. No, it cannot. The state has to put the conditions to bring people to invest and leverage all the opportunities that we have in the country in terms of skills, in terms of proximity to Europe, in terms of proximity to the markets, etc. So that's the way how we approach things. We approach it also by solutions that are really mainly local, because each region could have specificities, and we have in our organization, Afek Tunis, in each region, we have, of course, a vision that is national, that is for the country. We have the program, the platform that is national, that is for the country, but we are now adapting it for each region. And our purpose is to come and say, if we are, and that's our target, in the government, what we will push for, that's why we want to have the right weight, what we will do the first year, what we will do the second year, what we will do the fifth year, to be concrete, pragmatic. Because today, people are needing really to come back to her grandfather politic, the real politic. Be concrete, what you will do, and respect it.
Thank you. Meriem.
Just the political question you said about how you're going to confront another. Well, we're going to confront all our competitors for a start. Yassine has just touched upon it. And Nida Tunis came into the landscape as a balancing power. So the confrontation is off our back in a way. That means that you just take your time to actually give your own program and what you really are about, instead of wasting your time confronting anybody else who's got their own program. And hopefully the electors will choose between us. It's really a matter of marketing after that.
Thank you.
You're not convinced, are you?
Well, you have a few months to craft the message. Questions?
Walt Cutler, I had the honor of serving our country in Tunisia, and I knew your grandfather, and he was a trailblazer when it came to women's rights and so on. But you were talking about youth, elections. How do you get them involved? I just wanted to ask you, I don't think we mentioned the word social media, and which is, of course, throughout the region. But how do you plan to use this in the electoral context?
Another question? We've got a question back here.
Good morning. I'm a question culture analyst for MENA region. I have a question. You said you tried to help build capacities in Tunisia by training organizations. What about the administration? Because in the region we tend to mix administration and government, while the administration should work for the people. And for our Tunisian guests, do you think all of this would have been possible if the military institution had behaved differently? I mean, like other
Like in Egypt.
military institutions. Thank you.
Yes. And one last question.
Hi, I'm Leila Shenoufi. I have a question about, yes, the voting. How is, it's a little bit, it was touched upon many people here, by many people, the problem of noise and so many parties in the landscape. It's not about confrontation, it's about also having clarity and making it easier for and attractive for people to get out and vote. And that takes me really to the principal question, how are we going to get people to get out and vote? And is there any examples from transitional region, other countries where it worked? What it is that works? Is there a silver bullet?
Social media, military, getting out the vote, and question about administration. Who would like to start?
I'll start because I'll be very quick. Just with respect to just get out the vote. No silver bullet, but it's true in this country, I think, as well. Direct contact with people really makes a difference. If people see you and have an opportunity to feel like they can express their ideas to you, that makes a big difference in motivating them on what to ultimately do. With young people, maybe it occurs more in an online social media context, but it's important that the stakeholders be driving the vote in the sense of interacting with people.
Social media? Would like to take the social media question?
Yeah, social media maybe also a question. I like the question of the military because my father was an officer. So the social media, we are using, of course, the social media. The social media played quite a large role, and we have here an activist, a blogger, President Zied. He's one of the most active blogger during the period of the revolution and even afterwards with Tunisia Live. We feel in the last few months that people are a bit, pulling back on Facebook, especially because we had a period of time where there's a lot of information that were not true at the end, etc., etc. So, but we anticipate that it will come back for the campaign, etc., because it's we have, as we said, we have demographically speaking, we are really at the peak of the young people coming, etc. But these people are educated, And in Afek Tunis, we are leveraging that, especially in the rural area, because we don't have so many people having internet access. But now we are finding solutions in the telcos, of course, that they have Facebook, even if they don't have internet. They have Facebook, even if they don't have email. So Facebook is the social media are really a way how to adapt. Twitter is less successful in Tunisia, but Facebook is stronger. So we are using it. We won't describe in detail how, but we are using it, of course. For the military, yes, of course. I mean, that's maybe thanks again to grandfather who didn't invest in the military forces so much. My father was always telling me, because when I was a kid, you always want to do like your father. You know, okay, military, I want to do like you, Air Force especially. I said, no, you'll waste your time. So why? We have military forces that are, that are here just to resist 48 hours if Gaddafi attacks us. That's it. And in 48 hours, we have enough time that our friends come. So today, that's maybe a problem with all what's going on in the region, etc. But fortunately for Tunisia, the military forces didn't play really, they played a role for sure, but a neutral role in all what happened politically, and that was maybe exceptional in the region. And that's due to how our independence happened and how it's been managed after the independence. Look at all the other countries, and you will find the military, after the independence, they were in power, so they're still in power today.
Meriem, any final thoughts about the upcoming elections, hopes, expectations for either your party or the country?
We just have to work hard and
Women,
go.
we get out to vote.
Yes. I think I'll have a lot of hammams to go from now on.
Well, I mean, the point about seeing people face to face, exactly, that's how you're going to build the name of the party.
Yeah.
Well,
just one
yes,
point
please.
on the how we get people out to vote and our door-to-door approach. Now we are a bit more aggressive in terms of responsibility. I say, okay, we are unhappy about politicians. Nothing is working well, etc. What do? We'll import politicians to manage the country? Politicians are just a small ratio of the population. You need to choose the best to represent you. And that's our role. You cannot get out of it. That's one of the messages.
Well, I think we're going to be very closely following Afek Tunis in the upcoming elections, and certainly the elections in general. So it's been really an honor and a delight to have you here and to hear about what's coming up. And thank you for joining us. And thanks, IRI.